Good morning. Mm-mm. No thanks.
She's a full of it.
We are all feeling much better. Marsha, we are finishing up Colossians tonight. So tonight will be our last night of Colossians. And then we're going to move into Exodus. So I'm super excited about that. That's kind of where we're going to be at this morning to kind of show a little bit about like what Exodus is going to be about because it's so good. But today we're finishing up Colossians in the membership. Charity's being sarcastic. Imagine that. She's struggling this morning too. Amanda, you gotta quit being an overachiever.
I started it this morning, so whoops.
Overachieverness is.
I'm already up to chapter 5.
Of course you are. Okay. Good morning. About to freeze. What? What?
After sleeping in there last night and then coming in here, I've got a little bit of a sweat.
Well, y'all look at my pen. Look at my pen. It says Purpose of Hope on it. I love it. I love it. I've been using all the things. I've been using it. It's so cute. And it writes so well. Honestly, I love it. Love it. It's on my website. You can get this and the keychain. And for people's information, me and the lady who makes these for me and her talked, and I was like, you need to glue these bad boys down. And with the keychains. And she did. So none of them will ever come off. Stop. That's what she came in here just to throw your head up at me. Friend, it just completely, depends on what you are going through. But if I had to think off the top of my head who I would study if I was a single mother and just having a really hard time, honestly, it would be Hagar. Hagar is in Genesis. Where's she at? Will you find her? Mm-hmm. Genesis, I'll tell you what chapter. But I would go read about her because she was a woman who got put in a situation of not really her own free will because she was a slave. And she ended up running away. And she thought she was going to have to watch her son die. But instead, God appeared and spoke to her and saw her and loved her.
It's Genesis 16.
Genesis 16. Jessica said 17. 16, 17. Is it echoey for anybody else?
I know I'm sure I'm ready. I know I'm sure I'm ready.
Oh, I get what you're saying. He said, I know I'm short on money. And I'm like, why does he need what? He means short on money. He means he needs money. That's what that means. Okay. I was like, what? That made no sense. Threw me off this morning.
Who?
Ethan.
He cracks me up.
All of those should be shipping. all of our orders have shipped unless they are waiting on something. So if that was all you got, it should have already shipped. I know from our live last week, the only things that haven't shipped are things that had the children's 15 ounces with them. I had to get some more of those, and they should be here by Wednesday, and then all of those are going to go out too. We try to get everything shipped within a week, but our turnaround time is 1 to 2, sometimes 3. I mean, small business, trying to make sure we have everything, but we have gotten really good at getting things out within a week. Thank you, Nellie. All right, this morning we are gonna be... Oh, yeah, one of the translucent. Those came in. So your order will be shipping on Tuesday. I saved y'all this morning. Did y'all see that? Did y'all see those ninja skills? Those ninja skills this morning, they are fired up and ready to go. I caught y'all. Did you see that? Well, my goodness.
Well, I mean, if you hadn't knocked them over, you wouldn't have had to catch them.
Don't quit telling on me. It ain't like I meant to knock my Bible knocked them over. It was this.
Shame on it.
Charity said I feel so safe in your hands. You're ridiculous. Some of our sticky notes, we had to reorder those, but those came in. Those are still in my kitchen. So you should expect that to be shipping out on Tuesday. All right. This morning, we are going to be... Look at him, matchy. Exodus chapter 15. Good morning. We are going to be on Exodus chapter 15. Definitely gonna, I'm gonna do another live this week. Here's the schedule. Thursday will be when I do that. Might do one in between that, but Thursday is a different, plan. Plan is set for Thursday.
Yeah, it is.
We put that on Steve's book bag. That's his. We are going to be in Exodus chapter 15 this morning, and we're going to be at verse 22. I am also, so something y'all can expect this week is to be in 1 John as well, because I've been in 1 John these past couple of days, and it is so good. So I'm going to go all the way through 1 John, 2 John, and 3 John. So you can definitely expect that this week as well. But today we are going to start in Exodus, and we're going to do chapter 15, and we're going to do verses 22 through 27. And we're going to read the story, and we're going to talk about it because it's really, really good. I am using my NLT this morning. So I'll be reading out of an NLT this morning. Yeah, 1 John. Super convicted. Angie, all I did was read her something yesterday, and she started crying. All I did was read. So it was great. But... all right, if you've been around here for a little bit, you know that we've had a lot going on here, and it's been a struggle bus, and it has been, it's been very hard and very defeating, and just lots of things, right? Lots of things. So this story right here is so good for that. It is so good for that. This is going to give you a little sneak peek into what we're getting ready to go into as far as the mentorship goes, because we're getting ready to go into Exodus. And I got lots of things planned and in store. If you are ready and you've got your Bibles open and you're ready to read this morning, go ahead and say, I am. Girl, that just means you need to be here, because this is going to be so good. It's going to be so good. Good morning. Look at y'all ready, Freddies. Look at y'all ready, Freddies. All right. We're going to read Exodus chapter 15, and we're going to be at verse 22. So I want to set the scene for you a minute so that you know what we're getting into. If you've never read the book of Exodus, okay, it is about the exodus of the Israelites. It is about the journey from Egypt and slavery to the promised land, all right? But you see, it wasn't that easy. It was supposed to be, and this was only supposed to be an 11-day journey, but it actually took 82 years. Yes. So this chapter of one chapter in the Bible, Exodus, took 82 years. Okay? So, and it was only supposed to take, them 11 days. 11 days. But yet they ended up in the wilderness for 40 years, right? And where we are at right here is they've already experienced the plagues in Egypt and they've already escaped. And God has parted the Red Sea and they went through on dry land, and then they got to the other side and they praised and they sung an amazing song. And I want you to notice that the first half of 15 is the praise and the amazing song. So verses 1 through 21, they are singing to the Lord. They are being led in worship by Moses' sister, and the sister that saved him, by the way, that put him in the thing and then sent him down the river. But anywho, that's another story. But a really good one, but that's a whole nother story. But from verse 21 to verse 22, okay, they've went over and they're praising and they're, God has delivered us and he parted the sea and we walked through all dry land. And now all of a sudden, right? Yes, 82. Yep, Exodus took 82 years to get all the way through. We studied that at our Bible study we hosted Friday night, right? Yeah, got my days mixed up. But in between verses 21 and 22, they've already become discouraged again. And I just relate to this in my life so much lately because we are all on a journey just like them. And it might not look like Exodus. It might not look like being freed from slavery. But we are all on some sort of journey that it feels like it's a roller coaster. It's up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. And it is feeling like, oh, we're good. Oh, now we're not. Oh, we're good. Now we're not. It's like really high highs and really low lows. And we're really unsure. How do we navigate that? How do we navigate the really high highs and the really low lows? And sometimes that don't feel so great. Sometimes, something that I've learned lately is sometimes following the Lord is the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. Yes, for the whole book. It is. The whole book of Exodus takes 82 years. 40 they were lost in the wilderness. But the whole book of Exodus is 82 years. But I think that we go through these journeys and they're really high highs and they're really low lows, and just like the Israelites, right? From one moment to praising to the next moment, scared to death. And then you see we got Moses in the midst of this all, and the people keep turning to Moses. Why'd you do this to us? Why'd you do this to us? Why'd you do this to us? But Moses didn't do this to them. All of this was for them. So this is just a really good reminder for us today. So let's read it, and then we're going to start over, and we're going to read it again, friends. So Exodus 15, verse 22 says, Then Moses led the people of Israel away from the Red Sea, and they moved out into the desert of Shur. They traveled in this desert. I laugh so hard when I read that, the desert of Shur, because it's like sure. That's where my mind goes. It's like the desert of Shur. Like, I'd love to go there, but really not. That's just what my mind does. Anyway, they traveled in the desert for 3 days without finding any water. All right. I'm not going to talk about it. I'm going to keep reading it, okay? And then we'll start back over. When they came to the oasis of Mara, the water was too bitter to drink. So they called the place Mara, which means bitter, okay? Then the people complained and turned against Moses. What are we going to drink? They demanded. So Moses cried out to the Lord for help, and the Lord showed him a piece of wood. Moses threw it into the water and made the water good to drink. It was there at Mara that the Lord set before them the following decree as a standard to test their faithfulness to him. He said, if you will listen carefully, if you will listen carefully to the voice of the Lord your God and do what is right in his sight, obeying his commands and keeping all his decrees, then I will not make you suffer any of the diseases I sent on the Egyptians, for I am the Lord who heals you. After leaving Mara, the Israelites traveled on to the oasis of Elm, where they found 12 springs and 70 palm trees. They camped there beside the water. So we're getting ready to get into this. Yes, look at Jessica making that connection that Angie made too. She did ask to be called Mara because it meant bitter. So you'll find that again in Ruth, which is so good. But let's start back over. All right, let's start back over and let's really dig in and let's talk about this. So Moses led the people away from the Red Sea and they moved out to the desert of Shur. Sure, I'd love to be here, but maybe not. They traveled to the desert, in this desert, for 3 days without finding any water. It took them 3 days to go from worshiping and God just parted the sea and we walked through on dry land and oh, praise him, to, my goodness, I'm defeated. And this, my friends, is why feelings are so defeating and why we can't live by them. Because feelings say, God hasn't shown up for me in 3 days, so he must not love me anymore. And that's not true at all. We have to learn that feelings aren't the things that is supposed to lead us through every single day, because feelings are so fleeting. They will lead you in the wrong direction. They will not guide you the right way. And in fact, they actually might try to lead you other directions that are not so good for you, right? You cannot live by the way that you feel. Because if you live by the way that you feel, man, your life will really be a roller coaster. Right? It only took 3 days. 3 days for them to go from worshiping to we can't find no water. The fact is we feel, but feelings aren't facts. I know that's right. We've been saying that in the mentorship for forever. I love it. Thanks to Angie. So I want to ask you a question with reading that. How long does it take you to go from, oh, Lord, I'm praising you. Listen, he just parted the waters for them. I mean, just whoosh. And they just walked through on dry land. And all it took was 3 days for them to forget the miracle that God just performed 3 days ahead of time. So my question is, are we people who we pray for God's miracles in our life? But are we people that when God gives them to us, it only takes us 3 days to forget what he's done? It only takes us 3 days to forget what he's done. It doesn't take us long at all to bounce back and all of a sudden be feeling human again. Right? And then it says, let's see. And then it says, when they came to the oasis of Mara, the water was too bitter to drink. So they called the place Mara, which means bitter. Sometimes life may seem bitter. It wasn't just the water that was bitter. It was their attitudes. Their attitudes were bitter. They had just received the provision from God. And yet 3 days later, they are already complaining and bitter and not sure why they're where they are and why there ain't no water. Listen, if he parted the Red Sea for you, he can most definitely provide you with some water. The question is, are you going to be bitter? Or are you just going to keep going and trust that God will do it? He's done it before, so he'll do it again. And he already parted the sea, so he'll bring you the water that you need. And I don't know what you're going through in your life, but I do know that you have experienced God's miracles before. You have experienced the provision before. You have experienced that before. So why is it only taking us a couple of days to get back into our fleshly ways of not realizing what God has already done for us, and that if he done it before, he'll do it again. He's unchanging. He's the same today, tomorrow, and forever. He's going to be there for you. And he's not going to let you thirst to death. He never planned to leave the Israelites. But man, they thought he did. But they were experiencing an attitude of bitterness. And I just want to say this. Our attitude determines how we are going to deal with the situation that we are in. So you have a choice to make every single day. Your attitude is going to affect how you walk into a room and how you walk out. Your attitude is going to affect the relationships you have, the people that you talk to on a daily basis. Your attitude is either going to literally, I know it's cliche, but make or break you in the situation that you are in. So you get to choose how you see your situation. And are you going to see that there's just no water nowhere in sight? Or are you going to choose to remember that 3 days ago he parted the sea, so the water's coming? So what is your attitude going to be upon entering into this season of your life? And we can choose to be bitter, like the Israelites right here, like Naomi was after she lost her sons and her husband. But see, if there's something that I've learned about God, and as we keep reading, we are going to see it's in the bitterness that he's going to deliver you to a place of strength. But how are you going to handle the season of bitterness? Because you're not exempt from it. And if there is a truth that I could give you this morning, it is that you will experience a time of a bitter attitude. You will experience a time of when the water is too bitter to drink. You will experience a time when you don't want to be going through what you are going through. You will experience that. That is a given. We live in a world that is full of sin. Okay? You will experience that time. You will experience that moment. But it's in that moment that you get to decide who you're going to serve and how you're going to do that. So are you going to serve the world and be bitter and complain and all these things? Or are you going to serve God and remember he followed through before, he's coming through again? I'm going to tell you something. I think that is so funny that stood out to me about like them traveling into the desert of Shur. And me saying, sure, I'd love to go, right? We laugh at that and we say that's so funny. But let me just say something. Sometimes that's exactly how it feels to follow God. Feels like, sure, I would love to do that. Because you do not want to. The reality of following God is you're going to have to do so many things you don't want to do. You're going to have to give up things in your life that you might not really want to give up. You might love those things of the world, but you're not of the world. You might love these things that you are doing, but you're not of that. And if you want fellowship with God, you got to put it down. Sometimes it feels like, sure, Lord, I really don't want to do that, but you said it, so I'll do it. Sometimes it is so uncomfortable. It's like, sure, I'd love to do that. But you really know that you really don't want to do that. It's very uncomfortable. You can't see a way around it. You can't see a way out of it. You see, it's kind of like when he led the Israelites to the Red Sea, because they're like, sure, I'd love to be here. The enemy is on this side and the river and the sea is just going on this side. How are we getting out of here? Sure, I'd love to be in this position right now because it really feels like we're at a dead end. Sure, I'd love to. Sometimes it really feels like that. It really feels like, sure, I really don't want to do this, but I know I have to. You see, and I've been in one of those seasons, and it's very uncomfortable. Me and Steve were, just talking about it last night. And I was like, it's one of those where, Lord, let me get out of the way so that you can move. But I just need you to know I feel a little uncomfortable right now. I feel a little bit unsure right now, Lord. What's this going to look like? What does it mean? Lord, I'm nervous Nelly over here. I'm nervous. Right? I don't know what I'm going to do. And this feels very uncomfortable. So sure, I'd love to do this. But not really. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? So I can't help but think that the Israelites felt that way. They were in bondage and in slavery, and they were just, they had slave drivers, all right? They were just in bondage and all these things, and all it took was 3 days for them to get back to being bitter. That's all it took. So when he led them to this place, I'm sure they're like, sure, I'd love to be here. There's no water, but I'm blessed. That ain't what they said. But you get the point. You get what I'm saying. So sometimes we get led into a place of bitterness. But you see, it's in that place of bitterness that you have a choice. It's in that place of bitterness. Are you going to, it's okay to have feelings. It's okay to feel bitter. But are you going to act bitter? What is your attitude going to say about your situation? Is it going to say, hey, I'm really bitter? Lord, you just let me down. Bitter. Or are you going to say, Lord, I really don't understand why we're here or why you led me here. And honestly, Lord, I am feeling real bitter. But Lord, I know that you're the God who turns bitterness into provision. And I know that you've done it before, so you'll do it again. So I'm going to stand here, and my feelings may tell me I'm bitter, but I'm going to be okay because you are here with me. What's your attitude going to say about the moments when you find yourself in a bitter situation? What's your attitude going to say about that? We got to keep going or we're not going to get through it. Then the people complained and turned against Moses. What are we going to drink? They demanded. Sometimes we get in that bitter attitude. What are we going to do, Lord? You led me here and now you've just left me. You've just left me and I'm bitter and I don't know what I'm going to eat and I don't know what I'm going to drink and I don't know how I'm going to make it, Lord. Right? I don't know how I'm going to make it. You see, though, instead of going to God, they went to Moses. It was God who led them into this situation, but it was Moses that they blamed. I want to ask you a question this morning. When you find yourself in a situation that is very uncomfortable for you, do you go to God with it or do you look at who you can blame? Right? Do you look at who you can blame? Because I think a lot of the times we just try to see who we can blame. We like to play the blame game. We get into these situations and people are just out here peopling, for lack of better words. Y'all love when I talk like that. But instead of realizing that we have ended up where we've ended up God was trying to take them to the promised land. So they had to experience a moment of bitterness, and they're going to have to experience many more things because they continued to complain. But he brought them in this, he's taking them to the promised land that's going to be overflowing with milk and honey. He's already promised them that. But when we find ourselves in a bitter state, our first reaction is to blame other people. So who's the person that you blame? Who's the person that you blame because of what has went wrong in your life? Who's the person you blame for your bitterness? You see, the enemy has a really great way of doing that. If he can keep you pointing fingers at each other, he can keep your eyes off of God. And you better write that down because that was good. If he can keep you pointing fingers at each other, he can keep your eyes off of God. The people went to Moses instead of going straight to God. But now watch what Moses does. In verse 25, so Moses cried out to the Lord for help. Moses went directly to the source. So are you going to be like the Israelites, and are you going to find somebody to blame, or are you going to go directly to the source? Because I don't know about you, but I'd just rather skip over the blaming people part, and I'd just rather go directly to the source, because that's going to be a quicker answer. That is going to be a better reliance. People are always going to let you down. Listen, that's one of our misconceptions about people, is we just expect them to be good and perfect all the time. They're not going to be. They're not going to be. If things were going to be good and perfect all the time, then
we wouldn't need God.
Right. But also, the point I'm trying to make is, this is the reason that best friends don't last and that marriages don't last. Because the minute that somebody lets you down, you're like done with them, and you're throwing them in the sea. Like that's the problem. The minute that somebody lets you down, you're throwing them under the bus. What are we going to drink, Moses? You let us out of the slavery, Moses. What are we going to drink? Moses is better than me, because I'd be like, why don't you just go back and look at the sea that he just parted? Do you not remember all those 10 plagues that you just endured, and somehow you're still living? And the sea just parted for you. And do you not remember that he led us by cloud and by fire to where we were supposed to be? And do you also not remember that he destroyed all your enemies with that sea? And do you also not remember that he positioned himself not only in front of you to guide you, but in the back to protect you when the enemy was coming up on your back? What about this aren't you getting? Right? So he's just so much better than me, because that's how I would have handled it. You know what I'm saying? I'd be like, well, pump the brakes, Israelites. Let's really think this through. But you see, again, this is just how he works. It's how the enemy works. Because all he's got to do is get you pointing fingers at each other. This is why best friends don't work, and this is why marriages don't work. You go into some sort of relationship with somebody else, whether it's best friend, husband, wife, whatever, and the moment that they let you down, you're like, oh, you broke all trust. You broke all trust. I don't want nothing to do with you anymore. People are going to let you down. Are you going to love them and forgive them? Listen, if you are being honest with yourself, you let Jesus down on a daily. If you are being honest with yourself, you do. I do. Anytime that we get angry, we're letting Jesus down. Anytime we're not showing love, we're letting Jesus down. If you are being honest with yourself, you let Jesus down every single day, and yet he still continues to cover you. So if Jesus can love you that big, then why can't you just love other people? You wouldn't lose as many friendships if you would quit blaming people for our circumstances and instead just go directly to the source. Go to God for everything, not to people. And when people let you down and you're finding it really hard to forgive them, go to God to be able to give you that forgiveness to forgive them. But if you're over here, I have no reason why I can't keep any friends. I have no reason why I can't keep a boyfriend or a girlfriend or a husband or a wife. Well, who's the common denominator here?
Imagine that.
The common denominator would be you. So maybe you need to self-evaluate yourself. Are you focused on blaming other people when you end up in a bitter situation? Or are you just going to skip right over that and be like, people will be people. They will let me down. Lord, that is okay. You still created them and you still love them. Right? You still created them and you still love them. Go directly to the source. Okay? To help you get through that bitter season. Now, I want to show you something else. And this goes along with going directly to the source. So what happened in verse 25? Moses cried out to the Lord for help. And what did he send? And the Lord showed him a piece of wood. Y'all may think, oh, that's not significant. Give me a moment. I'm going to show you. Moses threw it into the water and made the water good to drink. He said, because that's not significant. That is a piece of wood. It's actually a reference to the cross. Because it's what it was made out of. So, what I see, he gave him a piece of wood. The wood got thrown into the water, and it made the water pure to drink. So why don't you try adding Jesus to the mix? Why don't you, well, I know. Why don't you try adding Jesus to the mix? Because the water would have stayed bitter had Jesus. And if we want to jump over to the New Testament, Jesus is the source of living water.
And he became our ultimate Jehovah Rapha.
Yes.
Because he healed us. Oh,
because
my
he healed us. Yes.
Ooh.
And listen, usually I don't even and I figure that comment right there is like strictly, I could be wrong, but maybe because we don't believe. But listen, has nothing to do with Jesus. This is for the ones that do want to know. Friend, Jesus is found from the very beginning, from Genesis chapter 1. So you might not even hear about Jesus, so to say. You're going to hear prophecy about him in the Old Testament, and in the New Testament you're going to learn all about him. But let me tell you something right now. He was there from the beginning, and he was thought up from the beginning. And when God made us, he didn't say, let me make them in the image of me. He said, let me make them in the image of us. And he was talking about God, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit. The Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. You are made in his image, and he was there from the beginning. So let me tell you something. When he threw the piece of wood into the water, he's the source of living water. He will turn your water from bitterness to provision. In the beginning, there was the Word, and the Word was with God. Yes. Listen at it. The references to the cross. Try adding Jesus to the mix. You're in a bitter season. I hear you. You're thinking, man, I'm in the desert of sure. I don't really want to be here, but sure, I'm glad I'm here. You're bitter. Your attitude may be bitter. You may be experiencing bitterness. You may be having to do things you don't want to do. I hear you loud and clear. You may not understand it. Okay, I hear you and I get it, and listen, you ain't by yourself. I'm there with you, and the Israelites came before you, and they went through it too. But when we add Jesus to the water, you all right? Angie, about choked yourself out. Add Jesus to the mix. Watch what happens when they add Jesus to the mix. Not only is the water good to drink now, but let's keep reading. It was there at Marah. It was there at the place of bitterness that the Lord set before them the following decree as a standard to test their faithfulness to him. Number 1, it was in bitterness that God spoke to them and ministered to them. But it was also in bitterness that their faith was put to the test. Friend, your faith will be put to the test. God is not a genie in a bottle. He isn't here to grant your every wish. That is not how he works. That is not how he works. He works by working in your life. Listen, if you never had a test, you wouldn't have a testimony. And if you never made a mess, then you wouldn't end up in miracles. And y'all can tell me that all you want to. But I know that there are people who will end up standing with Jesus in heaven that I will even get to reconnect with because I spoke what God laid on my heart. So you're also missing the part in the gospel where it says that men, women, and children will prophesy. So I'm not here for that. It was in the bitterness that God spoke and tested. I love that. I love that so much. It even tells us in the New Testament that, test in our life is what produces faithful endurance. It's the test in our life. 1 verse 1. Stop. Charity. 1 verse 1. 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 That. Bad Charity. That's funny. Listen, but you know what, though? That's a good teaching moment. I'm called to love you anyway, and I will. And I will. I'll love you anyway. I'll love you anyway, and I'll pray for you anyway. She said, I repent. Just stop. Charity, you're going to have to... Mom, stop it. Like, that's so good. And then verse 26 he said, if you will listen carefully. I need you to hear a couple of things. That said, if you will listen carefully. I circled if you. You have to listen. That's your choice. That word if, you have a choice to make. If you want to get from bitter to provision, you got a choice to make. What's your attitude going to look like in the bitterness? Are you willing to add Jesus to the mix? You have a choice to make here. He said, and watch this, it's connected to a promise, right? So it says, if you will listen carefully. Okay, so they had something to do. They had to listen carefully. It says, if you will listen carefully to the voice of the Lord your God and do what is right in his sight, obeying his commands and keeping all his decrees, then I will not make you suffer any of the diseases I sent on the Egyptians, for I am the Lord who heals you. You see, number one, we have to listen carefully. We have a choice to make. Are we willing to listen carefully? Are we? Are we willing? Are we willing to? It really, a lot of scripture boils down to that. Are you willing? Are you willing to get out of the way so that God can work? Are you willing to be in a desert of sure, okay, so that God can provide the provision so that you will have the testimony to go out and share with the world about all that Jesus has done for you? That's the question. It's are you willing? Are you able? When it feels like you're in a bitter place. Are you willing to say, Lord, I'm feeling so bitter and I don't want to be here and I have no idea what I'm going to drink while I'm here and it feels really dry right here. You see, there's something about a desert, okay? It's a disisolated, bare place. And I think sometimes we feel like that in our life, right? Like we're in a desert. It's dry. It's bare. We don't see anything in sight. We don't see nothing to drink in sight. We're just bitter and it's dry and we can't breathe because we feel like we're just suffocating by the dryness of life. See, that's what a desert feels like. It feels like it's super dry. Nothing's happening. When will rain ever come? When are we going to find water? It's just bare. Right? That's what a desert feels like. You have been there in your life. And what does a desert bring? Bitterness. Because you're bitter. Man, I was just living in Egypt. I may have been slave drive, but you know what? I have fish. Yeah, but you were in bondage. Like, he brought you out of somewhere that was hurting you. And it may seem bitter right now. It may seem bitter right now that you have to go through this. I hear you. That's okay. The fact is you feel, but feelings aren't facts. I hear you. It is hard right now. It is bitter right now. It seems like he led you out of one place for you to end up in this dry desert land. I hear you. But it's in the dry desert that he speaks to them. It's in the dry desert that he says, if you'll listen carefully to me and the degrees of my commands, then you won't have to suffer what the Egyptians suffered. For I am the Lord who hears you. I am the Jehovah Rapha. Right? And I love that because watch. It was in the bitter place that God revealed himself to them as their healer. You see, we spend so much of our time wishing to get to the better place. It's a dry heart. Ooh, I love that. That's good. I like that. Because that's be true. It's our heart posture. Everything leads to our heart posture in Scripture. But it's in the bitter place that God revealed himself. We spend so much time trying to get to the better place. To the land flowing of milk and honey. We spend so much time trying to get to the milk and honey that when we're in the bitterness, we are so busy pointing fingers at everybody else, and we're so busy just trying to figure out how to get out of it. But it's in the bitterness that you get that fellowship with God. That's an attitude change right there, because it says that it's in the bitterness that we can expect God to show up. Heal us, provide water for us, change us. We spend so much time just trying to get to the milk and the honey. I want to get to this place in my life or that place in my life. I hope this is coming across as powerful as it really is. Because I do think that there is something we can appreciate about the bitter times of our lives. It's in the bitterness that God will show up and show out. It is in the bitterness when we don't see any water and when everything is dry, to when we can be like, Lord, it's bitter and dry, but I know you're bringing a wave, okay? And I'm going to tell the people when you do. It's in the bitterness that you can just expect God to show up, because he wants to heal you. He wants to provide provision so that you will go and tell the world he wants to. You want to be better, not bitter, but bitter is the place where God shows up. Bitter is the place where you get to experience the Lord speaking to you and reassuring you that I'm the one who heals you. Have you ever realized that? Listen, I'm going to be transparent and honest with y'all. Okay, you ready? Have you ever realized that when you're in a place of provision, you quit reading your Bible as much as you did when you was in a place of dry desert? When you're in a place of provision, it's easy to go throughout your day. Everything's good. I don't need no help. I don't need nobody. Everything's fine and dandy and I'm living life and doing great. It's in the provision when you forget everything that God has already done. You quit sharing with people what God has already done. You quit referring back to God. You quit getting in your word every morning. You fall into complacency. So I feel like sometimes we got to be taken back to bitter. Because we got to be taken back to the place where we will pick up our Bible every day. Back to a place of, no, child, remember. Remember what I've done for you. Sometimes we got to be taken out of a place from provision back to bitterness so that we can remember what he's done for us before. So that we'll get back in our Bible. So that we'll get back to reading his promises. So that we won't forget. So I choose to look at moments of my life that really feel like a dry desert. Instead of it being, Lord, why? You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of Job. I'm the Lord who giveth and also the one that takes away. We are fooling ourselves if we are walking around here every day not remembering that everything we have is because of who God is. But we tend to forget that when we're in a moment of provision. When we are in a moment that is good and dandy and great. Oh, thank you. When we are in a moment that looks like that, it's easy to forget all God has done. It's in the moment of bitterness that God will come and pick us up off the ground. And I love being able to count on that. That's the best part. It is the best part. Like, knowing that when you're in the moment of bitterness, that's when he's going to come and get you. Because you be acting like you don't need him in a moment of provision. But in a moment of bitterness, when you turn to him, he comes and he gets you. And he picks you up and he says, come with me. Come with me and let me, I'm the Lord who heals you. Come with me and let me heal you. I love that. I love that so much. Gosh, it's so good. The last verse that we were going to talk about today, verse 27, watch this. After leaving Mara, after leaving the place of bitterness, the Israelites traveled to the oasis of El, which is a place of strength, where they found 12 springs and 70 palm trees, and they camped there beside the water. Ooh. Beside the water. Beside the living source. Oh, that's good. I didn't get that until just now.
12 springs.
Let me. Oh, yeah. 12. Mm-hmm.
12 tribes of Israel. Yep.
70. Number of 7. Number of completion. But we won't go into all that.
So much right there. Just
So much right there. Yep, in that verse. Yes, yes, yes. My favorite part of verse 27 is this. God knew when he needed to test them, and he knew when he needed to rest them.
Ooh, that's good.
He knows when you can withhold a test. And he knows when you need some relief. And you can trust him in both. You can trust him in both situations. You can trust that he knows who you need, when you need, how you need. You can trust that. You can trust that he knows how to get you out of a dry desert. You can trust that he knows how to get you out of bitterness into provision. And you can trust that when he takes you from provision back to bitterness, it is not a punishment, but a way for him to get glory. If you will allow it. You see, one of the things that I've learned about the enemy is if he can just make you take offense to something, he can get you pointing fingers. That's all he needs to do is get you distracted, pointing fingers at everybody. That's all he's got to do is get you thinking about how, man, why would God take me from provision to bitter? Why would he do that? Because maybe you need to be humble. Maybe you need a test. Maybe the people need to see that. One of the things that I always think about when I'm just struggling is the fact that so many people follow me and they think, man, she's always on the mountaintop. She's always on the mountaintop. She's always, being a David over here or being a Moses. She's always doing this, that, the other. Why is God so good to her and he ain't good to me? So in turn, God says, let me show y'all that she can suffer too. Nobody is exempt. So anytime that I feel like I'm going through a valley, I say, hey, at this point, maybe God is doing this in my life because he needs me to show them how to worship him in the process. Maybe I'm going through this because I am going to meet somebody who is going to need the word that I'm going to give, the testimony that I'm going to have, the mess I'm going to get myself out of that God's going to help me do. Maybe I'm in this to simply show people what it's like to still give God glory even in the midst of hardship. Humbled, yes, like, good morning. You sleepy? What? Stop now. What? You sleepy? Should have went to bed earlier. Like, look, they're saying good morning to you.
Good morning.
Good morning. You hear that? Listen, sometimes you got to be brought back to bitterness. Now, the Israelites, they put themselves there, to be quite honest, right here. It only took them 3 days to go from praising to bitter. Okay, they got in the dry desert the minute they got out, and the Lord was like, let me see what they gonna do here. And the first thing they did was, Moses, why you do this to us, man?
When things don't go our way, our first instinct is to complain and blame.
Yes, complain and blame. First instinct. Oh, that's good. That's good. Yep, and that's what they did. Complain and blame. That's so good. Coffee Talks are here on Monday, Thursday, and Friday at 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I upload all of my Coffee Talks to YouTube. Yeah, my dog. These are the doggy tippy taps. An NLT study Bible of sorts. I've been journaling in it. This is a chronological order Bible. I think it's the one I'm going to use next year. But I ain't sure yet. Y'all know me. I might say that, but then I'm going to go everywhere. Y'all know that. Y'all know how it is. Charlie is good. Kinda. He's fine. But he did open his stitches back up. So I have to call the vet when I get off of here and see what they want to do. I have these little... So this is actually scrapbook paper. And I cut them up into different sizes. And I put them in my Bible bags. And then I just glue them in when I need a little extra something. I do read from a King James Version. Just not when I am studying. And honestly, I don't read from it a lot. I own a bunch of them. I own a King James. I own a New King James. I choose not to use that version. For the most part. Just couldn't have 5 more Bibles, but next year you're probably right. But I just don't. It's just not my preferred Bible. And that's okay. He needs to come in. Can you go get him potentially?
Yeah, he's got new shoes on.
He should be right on the porch.
Probably.
But it's just not my preferred Bible. And that's it. Yes, Cassie. I love a Bible dictionary. My friends, I just want you to know this morning that they went from a place of bitter to a place of strength. The NLT is a very good version as far as reading it goes. Oh boy. Here comes the dogs. If you're new here, the way that I suggest studying is having many versions of the Bible to study and learn, and it's digging in. No, I do not think they leave some stuff out. It's understanding how the Bible is wrote. How the Bible is put together and how the manuscripts are written. So the reason that some people feel like some Bibles leave verses out, usually they don't. Usually those verses, they're showing you that they're left out because they're not in the reading, but they're at the footnotes in the bottom. They're not left out. First off. But second off, the reason that those are included in some Bibles and not in others is understanding the way the manuscripts are put together. Manuscripts are put together, so they had all this, writing, okay? But then there was little notes outside of that writing. So like for one of them is in Matthew and it's about prayer and fasting. The reason that prayer and fasting isn't in all of them, but some are put in the footnotes, is because that was a little note that was wrote out to the side that maybe somebody else added. So some versions choose to include that as original words and choose to put that in the writing, and some people don't. So it really depends on who is interpreting the manuscripts. But no matter what, the manuscripts are good. And you can go back even further, earlier than the King James. The first Bible wasn't the King James. It was actually the Genevieve. And then before that, there was the Dead Sea Scrolls. You can get your hands on those as well, a copy of those. So it's really understanding that the way the Bible is put together and what version you prefer. If somebody tells you, this is an unpopular opinion, but if somebody believes that a King James Bible is the only one you can read out of, they're practicing religion, not relationship. You will not find that verse in the Bible at all. And we don't do that. Here, I practice relationship with Jesus. And when Jesus found me, I want to say when I found Jesus, but man, he found me. And when he did, it was with a She Reads Truth Christian Standard Bible. And my life is forever changed because of it. So, I have a copy of the Dead Sea Scrolls, and I absolutely love them. Yeah, the Blue Letter Bible is really good. Hey, baby. But that is how, it's understanding how the Bible was put together.
Quit licking.
If you guys want to... Charlie. if you guys want to join more coffee talks, you can get a copy of the Dead Sea Scrolls off of Amazon. But please let me reassure you that if you have a hard time with the King James, then you're gonna have a hard time with a Genevieve or a Dead Sea Scroll. So you really need to read the Bible in an easier translation. So an NLT, a CSB, there is a NET, New English translation. It's really good too, but you need to read it in an easier translation to be able to go to the harder translations. I mean, and I say that because if you don't know how to read the Old English, then all you're going to do is get defeated from it. And then you're either not going to read the Bible at all, okay? Or you're going to end up going to church on Sunday and thinking that that's enough to fill your cup, and it's not. You're missing so much. So you really need to use other translations. Use your King James and an NLT. Use your ESV and another Bible. Like, use different Bibles to really help you gain better understanding. Yeah, it does me too. But you know what? Everybody is entitled to their own opinion, and there's plenty of people who won't follow me simply because I don't use King James. But I'm not here for those people. So they can go to church on Sunday and let their pastor fill them up with that. That's not what I'm here for. Honestly, for lack of better words, I'm going to be here for the misfits because that's who I am. I'm going to be here for the ones who are like, I really want to know Jesus, but everybody has told me that I can't because I don't read out of King James. And I'm like, hey, hi, here I am. Let me help you. Like, that's who I am. And that's what I'm always going to be. And people will either love it or they'll hate it, but I'm going to be the ones that help show you that no, you don't have to do it that way. Your relationship with Jesus can look a lot of different ways as long as you are growing your relationship with him and you are reading his word and you are wanting to grow him. Listen, I can go back to back. Listen, I didn't start with the King James Bible. But I could go head to head with somebody with one now, right? And if you want to get to that place, then you got to start somewhere else. And I'm here for that. And I'm here to show you how to do that. That's who I am. And that's who I'm always going to be. So I'm not everybody's cup of tea, but I'm not here to be liked by people. And I'm not here to be everybody's cup of tea. I am here to encourage the ones who want to know Jesus, but you've told that there's a right or wrong way to do it. And that's a lie. That's a lie. It's learning his word. It's believing that this is the inspired word of God. And God used men to bring this Bible together. And it is trusting in his faithfulness and in his goodness and in his authority. And it is reading his word and it is living it out to the best of our abilities. That is what that is. I'll take a cup of Kelsey to everyone. You're so cute. You're so sweet. Stop it.
I drank the Kool-Aid a long time ago.
No, you did. Yes. I love when Jesus talks through a children's Bible. That's what we use. Your our cup of coffee. I love that. I love that, Sarah. If everyone likes you, no one will love you. Gosh, that's good. That's a good word, friend. That's a good word. All right, you guys, I love y'all so big. I hope y'all having an amazing day. You can find us here on Coffee Talk at 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Monday, Thursday, and Friday. Yes, that's right. Monday, Thursday, and Friday, 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you want a deeper Bible study, I also offer a whole bunch of resources that you can find in our mentorship. And you can find all that in the link in the bio. And we also run a shop. We run a shop for all your Bible journaling needs and supplies. And we minister to people through that as well. So it's a great way to support us, my friends. But no matter what, find us back here. Find us, study with us. And it's a great time. But if you want to learn your Bible, we can do that together. Friday, Steve just wasn't feeling the best, and honestly, I just needed a mental health day, to be quite honest with you. And I had Bible study that night at the shop, so it was just, I just needed a day, so I took one. But we are feeling much better this week, and it's going to be a really great week, my friends. How do I teach my children the Bible? I sit down and talk with my kids about the Bible. I read a children's Bible. We read the regular Bible. They go to a Christian school. I pour into my children every single day. I pray over my children. I teach them Bible verses to use when they are dealing with life situations. When we read
Dinner
the
table.
Dinner
table Bible
table. Yep. Like I do lots of different things with my children. To help them learn the Bible, and we just have open conversations about the Bible. Oh boy. But my children love the Bible, and my children love the Lord, and my children, I had the opportunity to lead my children to salvation, and that was like the biggest honor ever. And it was in a car, and I don't know, this is a great thing ever. But my kids have been baptized. My kids can defend their faith. My kids, I'm so proud of my kids. My kids can stand up in a room and preach a message. I'm so proud of my children. And they can tell some adults more about the Bible than they ever know. And that just comes from constantly teaching my children the Word and reading it with them and letting them learn. I love that. I can't wait to go back. I cannot wait to really go back to school and dig into apologetics, and I'm really excited about that and teaching everybody. Raise up the next generation. Yes. I love that so much. We are going to start creating some resources to help y'all with your kids. They are in the works. We want to create something like this. It's not going to look just like this because this is something that was gifted to me, but it's going to look like this. Like it's going to be like little flashcards, so to say, that help you know how to help your kids, where to go in the Bible, how to talk to your kids about certain things, like certain little flashcards that will help the parents and the children. So when children ask you a hard question, you'll be able to go back to those, and it'll help you answer their question, and maybe you learn at the same time. So something that our company is going to start focusing on a whole lot more is creating the resources to help you teach your children and yourself. So I'm going to start making study binders with the books of the Bible I've studied. And I'm going to start making study guides that you and your families could do around the dinner table, which is something that I implement with my kids. I just want to start doing things that can help you in your environment, right? Like you come here and you get filled up. Now I want you to take this that you've gotten here, and I want you to go fill up somebody else with it. That's what creating disciples is. A lot of people really hate that. They think that, well, if she taught me, I taught them, they shouldn't go teach other people. No. That's literally your job. You teach them and they go teach. That's literally what Jesus did. You help them and then they go out and he taught the disciples, and then he called the disciples to go out and teach. He called 72 men, and women, and all these people in the New Testament, and then he sent them all out to go teach. So you need to be taught, and then you need to go out and teach. That's the will of God. That is what you're supposed to do, right? And I want to equip people for that. So and in the membership or the mentorship, that is also what we do. Is I teach you verse by verse, and you're able to learn, the big stories or all the stories, really, even the ones that you don't know, like the minor prophets, like Amos and Haggai, and just all these. Hosea is so good, but it's not taught a lot. But it's so good. But I'm here to teach you all the books about all the books. Right? Like all the books. And that's what we do. We went through the whole book of Job. If you've studied, most people look, for example, Job's one of my favorite examples. And this is kind of what you get in the mentorship is all the resources. I type all these things out and give them to you. You also get a lot of Zooms with me. But in the book of Job, most people know Job, and they're like, hey, Job lost everything and gained it all back. So I can lose everything and I can gain it all back. And while that is true, Job also was humbled by God because Job had an eye problem. At first glance of reading Job, you think that Job's friends are in the right for how they're talking to him, and they're really not. They're really not. Job's friends are actually bad examples of friends. They accused him of sinning, and sin is what brought all this upon him. But sin isn't what made Job lose everything. It was the enemy is who made Job lose everything, right? He was testing him. And in the midst, God was testing him, right? And God humbled him. Job actually had a pride problem. You won't know that if you've never studied Job. You don't really get taught that. But it's true. It's all true. It's all true. And it's really, really good. So there's a lot more to Job than just losing everything and gaining it all back, right? It's about the redemption power of Jesus. It's about just so much more. But those are the type of things that you learn in the mentorship. Okay, see, yes, okay, I got to go, friends. I got a long day ahead of me, and I got to plan my whole week, and I'm just, Charlie, quit, make him stop it. I got to call the vet. That's what I have to do. I got to call the vet and see what they say about all of these things about, no, Charlie, thank you. I got to call the vet and see about what they want to do. Because they told me that those stitches would not come out. They lied. Yes, they did. In fact, came out. So let me call them, get my day started. I hope you guys have an amazing rest of the day. I love that so much. Thank you. I hope y'all have an amazing rest of the day. If you're in the mentorship, I'll see you tonight. We'll finish up Colossians, and then we are going to start in Exodus, friends. And this is going to be so good. It's going to be so good. I love you guys so big. Have a wonderful day. And I will see you guys on Coffee Talk back here on Thursday morning at 7. Bye, you guys.